This is IBM Museum. I'm here in front of the OpenFace PS2 Model 35SX and thought, what better to do than to run the IBM System Information Tool on this system. And this will be also comparable to the PS2 Model 40SX because they share the same planar. The only difference is that case and the riser that's in there. With the 35SX, it has 3 adapter slots. For the 40SX, it has 5 adapter slots. And of course, the bigger case is a difference in the number of drive bays as well. Now, this 35SX, this error is expected at the startup. For some reason, and I've got a long block addressing support ROM BIOS extension that's in the system, and the system goes through and doesn't detect a hard drive, and then that BIOS extension kicks in, and as you can see, the hard drive is reported correctly. And at one point I did have the system working fine and booting to the drive. There may be some way I can adjust the CMOS a little bit. I've tried running the starter diskette and it just doesn't seem to get it in the right order. And it's normally telling me to run the starter diskette, although that's a never-ending loop. By just pressing F1, I can get to the point where it boots the system. And there is 16 megabyte of RAM on the system. So the initial memory count when I cold boot and this HiMemSys in going through and going through the ROM, going through the RAM, the size. Now, of note, we've got the VRAM expansion. I've added on 2 more chips to the motherboard to give a full 512 KB of video RAM. And that's going to be, there's going to be something in SIT where I want to see how it sees the video, or to show how it is reporting the video RAM. And I did have SIT on the system and even tried to load the patch that Major Tom did, and I had trouble with the floppy diskette, so I had to actually bring the hard drive over to a hard drive dock, an IDE dock on my system. Go the fade the other way here to my Windows XP system to get that transferred over. And that's what we're going to run, since that's fixed or patched for some of the details, although it doesn't necessarily matter for this level of machine. But we get to see the credits here. And I, of course, have marked the picture down here as that we're running the patched version of the System Information Tool. And I did go through and prep for this video a little bit. I'm not expecting anything under adapter information, of course, because this is an ISA system. And I'm not going to select the disk information because I have that 3.2 gigabyte hard drive, and the System Information Tool just doesn't know what to do with that. And so I'm going to skip over that disk information because all it does is lock up the system. So we go on to keyboard information. The 101, 102, and 122 key keyboards are supported. Keyboard ID 41AB, that's a really standard ID of the HERN1 and HERN2 keyboard. Get typomatic rate supported, set typomatic rate supported, and return to default typomatic rate supported. Memory information. Okay, and we have the memory hardware selection first. And this actually does give the response like I think we've seen under the 25SX, where it tells the modules and whether those are correct in this case of what it can support. And they roughly look correct, and it's correct in that I have two 8 megabyte modules of 70 nanosecond in the system, and there's 3 SIM slots. I use 2 of those. There's supposed to be something about an interleaved memory that can make the system faster if you match like 3 modules, and I don't know if it's referring to probably like the 4 megabyte modules and having 12 megabyte total. I would have to look at a little bit more detail to that. I don't know if I'm necessarily confusing that with the model 56 and 57. So, and we see the last supported module, the 8 megabyte 70 nanosecond parity is supported. I could actually find 80 nanosecond parity RAM around somewhere, just because it'd be nice pulling off the 70 nanosecond parity for a 46 level system. And so that gave the details on that section on the supported memory hardware. And here we have the system memory values. Okay. And the memory mapping. And that adapter ROM is that LBA BIOS hard drive BIOS extensions chip that's in there. And it shows the video RAM. And interesting for all that. And remember, we have that VESA driver loaded. And it's identifying 128 KB of video RAM. And that's, I guess, maybe a window, or I don't know. So then the memory map under 16 megabytes. And what's reserved. None available over 16 megabytes because, of course, that's the limit of the processor. Miscellaneous technical information. Second interrupt chip is present. Real-time clock is present. Wait time. Wait on external event is unsupported. Extended BIOS data area is allocated. System has an AT bus. DMA supports 24-bit address space. That's 16 megabytes for 24 address lines. Keyboard functionality call supported. Return POS data call is unsupported. This is not microchannel. Return memory map call is unsupported. And that's interesting for all that, for seeing the memory map a moment ago. Enable, disable processor functions call supported, unsupported. This does not have a CPU that can be controlled through those BIOS settings, and typically that's, again, enabling L1 and L2 cache is the processor functions that are supported with that. 8042 keyboard controller in system. Data streaming is unsupported. SCSI subsystem not present on the system board. Information panel is not installed, of course. This is not an IML system, another of course. SCSI support is not in the IML image. Mouse information, I have a mouse connected, but not a mouse driver running. And operating system information. And we're running this from DOS 6.22. MS-DOS. Okay, model and processor information. I selected that. Okay. So this is correctly identifying this as a IBM PS2 model 35LS, and there was a 35LS model / 40SX, and this is actually a 35SX. It has a hard drive on it. The LS models typically did not. They had a network card. LS means land station. And it is indeed an 80386 SX. Speed megahertz is 20 megahertz. That's also authentic. There is no coprocessor installed on this unit. The model is the F8, again, being anything that's 386SX or above. Submodel of 19, and I think a lot of the 25SX, the PS1 Pro 2123, they show up as that submodel 19. Quite a few of them. The BIOS revision is 0A, and that's hexadecimal for 10. You count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F for the full 16 values of a hexadecimal digit. And there is an earlier BIOS for the 35SX and 40SX, and that is looks to be version or revision 6, and they jump from that's the only versions I've seen is version 6 and version 10. Version 6 does not handle that ROM BIOS extension for the LBA hard drive support. It doesn't, the message doesn't come across the screen. I went round and round and put every possible setting in there to run that. At least that BIOS extension takes at least this revision 10. The 25SX, for the only BIOS version that's available for it, runs that adapter correctly, that ROM BIOS extension correctly. I want to see if the L40SX runs that correctly, or even whether I can plug in that card to the communications cartridge and see if I'm able to run a BIOS extension from there. There may be other XT IDE BIOS extensions or some other way of adding that LBA support to the system that do function with that earlier BIOS possibility. With that particular ROM BIOS extension, I checked the two BIOSes that I had, and it worked on one and not the other, the newer version. BIOS ROM date of September 25th, 1991. And the revision 6 version is the 4th of April, 1991. So just a matter of 5 months, a little bit more than 5 months between those versions. And those, again, are the only BIOS versions I've seen. I do have both of those BIOS images up online. And that would be where if you have the revision 6 and you want to add the functionality that I've disclosed that version 10 does, you could burn your own EPROMs. And the system board POS ID is FFFF. Typically that means that that's not a valid planar ID. And it's an ISA model. I mean, it'd be nice if it showed the difference between the 35SX and the 40SX of what risers installed. Just knowing that, being able to determine that in software, but the two systems will look indistinguishable otherwise. They have the same BIOS version. The system information tool is going to report the same thing for both systems. Parallel and serial port information, we've seen it just gives the number of serial ports and parallel ports. And one of each of those ports on the planar. So SCSI not supported on this machine, and that's correct. Lastly, we get to the video information. And again, we have that DOS VESA driver loaded for the full support of having 512 KB of video RAM. And here it reports it as the chipset, the video chipset, as extended VGA, and the monitor attached, color display attached. I'm running it through, of course, for this video capture, and it identifies 256 KB of video RAM. So that looks to be a hard-coded value based on the model that it determines. It's not a real-time value. It doesn't check that value. It doesn't check the VESA driver to see that it's 512 KB of video RAM. And certainly my expansion, once I get to it with the on the system, and I did see that I do have the Visual Basic for DOS loaded on that bigger hard drive. And so it's got likely that version of SIT that I've done under Visual Basic for DOS. It's a DOS program. And who knows, at the end of this time, we're right at 18 minutes right now of recording time. But that might be interesting running through that as well. I don't know comparably on versions on development. I don't know if I transferred over that highest level version I ended up with or not. And the video information is reporting just the 16 colors at and this is the number of characters, 80 characters per row, and 80 columns of characters across horizontal, and 25 rows of characters deep. And with the VRAM expansion for the 512 KB of video RAM, it's able to do the 132 character mode. That's the width of the screen. I think it's 43 rows for that setting as well, or it can be adapted to that level. But in any sense, the reported video information in the system information tool is not correct. It's not a real-time value. Let's see. And I prepped for the system information tool in this video, but I did not prep otherwise for for looking at anything else. And look, okay. So I do have a sit code on there that I've done. Let's see. I'm trying to remember. Is it VB DOS? I guess so. So Alt F. Open project. Okay, and I guess I had better look that I have a project there, and then it's Alt R. And I guess I could get the mouse over here because we're going to have mouse. We should have mouse support. Subprogram. Okay. So I'm going to get into, I don't know what, if I had ended up with a functional level, but you get to end up seeing some Visual Basic for DOS code and what to lay out in the call interrupt that I do, interrupt 15 hex, and what I do for checking that in the various feature bytes. And I probably need to go through and check this, how many feature bytes are in there. Have a little bit of functionality within that code, because there are models that can have more of those feature bytes than others. And that's too bad it wouldn't run. I'll have to go through, and this can be another development machine, or at least I know I have the Visual Basic for DOS on this system. So we are coming up on 23 minutes of recording time. That's just a brief overview of the IBM System Information Tool, that patched version that Major Tom did, running on the 35SX, and of course having identical results for what it would be when run on the 40SX. So if you like this video, go ahead and click on that like button. I certainly like to see people enjoying the videos and know if they are liking them. And if you do like a lot of the videos I do, subscribe to my channel and recommend it to any friends that are involved in similar things. I would greatly love to grow my channel. But that is all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.